Oh my god, man. This jump shot not bad, but could be better. Like that. 2K really just messed up everything because it changed my whole like SIGs and stuff around with a patch. So they did obviously mess up the game. And they constantly had this jump shot 70 foolishness that they have. It's pretty bad. Green bean. KD. The NBA stuff being open, like operating, that shouldn't be a thing, relatively speaking. That's my honest opinion. It shouldn't be open. Because nobody's going to be able to wear a face mask and stuff like that. Even NFL, it doesn't matter. Sweat and stuff can seep into people's skin and stuff like that. We get sickness and disease because of that. Like, I didn't even know that I still have my shot meter on. I normally don't even shoot with shot meter, so turn that off. But how? Food, water, certain stuff. To me, that NBA bubble thing like that, the players are talking about the food is bad. Yeah, the food is going to be bad. But I mean, you think about it, you don't need certain foods. You need to make sure that people are obviously getting their calorie limit and then not like doing certain stuff. Because outside food and stuff, like me personally, I like eating certain stuff that's good, like steaks, certain stuff like that. Steak and stuff is expensive, relatively speaking. But like today, I know I went to Panda Express, and I mean their food is pretty decent. Just went to the takeout. The United States is a COVID hotspot. Well, Brazil is second. There's other countries that have done far better and dealt with the coronavirus if you think about it. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but at the same time, I can see why certain people see that Americans and stuff is dumb. I think, like I said, like the United States is not even high in education, relatively speaking. And I mean, that's just the curriculum. Like a lot of stuff has to do with curriculum. Like if you had to think about it, 9 times out of 10, curriculum and certain stuff like school and stuff start going downhill when they start instituting Common Core. Common Core doesn't work. Cause I remember one time, like honestly, when I was going through school, I was like in 4th grade, and there was this new thing to teach us how to multiply. I didn't know how to multiply another way. It's called the lattice method, and then my mom saw that I did the lattice method to multiply, stuff like that. But after that point, I mean, I could multiply, but I didn't know how to multiply the other way. But I still got the same answer, but my mom was hot. When I had to show her my homework, show her that I could pick my homework. I was like elementary school, but besides the point. Alright. I could have pulled, but then again, No, we're not about to do that. I can probably pull here though. Yes, sir. I really don't have that many badges, relatively speaking. And I feel like, I don't know, certain badges and setups work a whole lot better, but it really don't matter, honestly speaking. I know a whole lot of people be sending me invites and stuff for games and certain stuff. I mean, I don't play certain games. Like sometimes I honestly just want to be like, you know, like solo thing. Honestly speaking, nowadays, it just depends. I'm enjoying playing 2K a little bit, but it's not that by that much. Honestly, I feel like it's something about playing a game, relatively speaking, and when you haven't really played it in a while, but it's just like if you play it to a point where you're not even doing anything. My problem I got with 2K now, or pretty much any other game, is that these event schedules, like, and they're terrible. The double rep thing is good, but Puma was really the best one out of them all. I know people who say that Puma, they had plenty of other opportunities for people to get rep, like the Dunk Fest. Right after the stuff was 3 times and 4 times the rep, but that's still not the same thing though. I'm surprised 2K didn't get sued though. 2K should have got sued. Because Puma Mania is not even rotation anymore. I hope they return that money. That's not even the first game I'm even getting on PS5. It's probably gonna be like dead last, like one of the last ones. Like I said, I think there's other games. I don't really have a problem with 2K. I just don't. There's not anything that make me want to buy it. He should have made that. I'll play a few games for y'all, but I'm just chilling. I know people talking about they're looking forward to the NBA season to start in a couple days. The restart. Speaking, there's a lot of stuff I just don't see. Because from a standpoint, you know, you really can't have certain stuff happening. Like someone got, I think they got some type of fine, like $50,000 fine for going outside the bubble to get food. It was that guy from the Sacramento Kings. I think his name was Rashawn Holmes. There we go. Rashawn Holmes. He got fined $50,000. $50,000 is a lot of money. I won't say it's not. There's some people, that's a lot of money compared to what some people make in 1 year, but I really don't try to think about what other people make and certain stuff, because I mean, at the end of the day, I just think that, you know, the more you are consumed by certain stuff, I feel like the less likely you are to really achieve goals and certain stuff. Like, you do stuff for money. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I mean, everybody gotta earn for keeps and stuff like that, but I just don't see a lot of stuff. The thing that's getting me nowadays, people talking about sign up for their course. I knew that one gonna go in. I don't even feel like this takeover lasted long, but it's whatever. And this jump shot looks like Damian Lillard, but it's not. I think it's his base, but I think Chris Mullin got one of the best jump shots in 2K. That's exactly whose jump shot I'm using. Chris Mullin. That's bull. Green. Almost a 90, at least with this build. Now, I haven't played 2K in a minute. My dude was like an 87 the other day, and I've been playing at least a couple games with this build. I did start this build like at the beginning of like 2020, like December, Christmas time, around that time. I've been playing on it off and on. Yes, at one point he was like an 82. I just stopped there. Nope. How? Virus. And that is pretty sad. A majority of people don't wind up dying, but at the same time, some of this got irreversible effects on people's body. Like certain stuff, like somebody, for instance, their quality of air, the oxygen, and when their lungs start filling up with fluid and certain stuff like that, they could die. I think that's kind of, that is pretty sad though. When people have fever and certain stuff from COVID, it's their body trying to fight against it. But I don't think this, people talking about the emergency vaccine coming out in September. Yeah, how they gonna do that? And a lot of people talking about they don't believe in vaccines. I mean, that type of stuff is stupid, honestly speaking. A lot of stuff people say is not even based in like fact. Like, you know, you'll believe in some rocks can harvest some energy or some like life force, but you don't believe in the vaccine. Okay. Like, people will pay $300 for some miracle rocks. Now, I don't try to criticize people's belief system, whatever, but nah. But a lot of stuff don't really make sense. Like, I can see certain stuff for what it is, a scam. I don't believe everybody good. I just really don't believe that. Like people talking about Dr. Sebi with the stuff he was saying. There's 19 that there's 19 amino acids. First of all, there's not 19 amino acids. There's 20. And there are only, like, there's 20 essential, but there are more amino acids than that. So, and protein and stuff is built out of amino acids. So, I knew that was about to go out. But, I don't know, man. I just don't believe a lot of stuff people be saying half the time. Or people think that certain stuff is deep. I just don't think certain stuff is deep. Dang, if I had the right pull up, I got that move. I meant to dunk it, but this player can't dunk like that. I have dunked like last stream or something like that, but my dunk is only like at a 43. You can still dunk, but it's a rarity. So I didn't mean to do that. Imagine double teaming. Got him. Like, I think they said like 140,000 people died from coronavirus. Like, not everybody dies and not everybody has a severe thing, but it is severe because people who got like compromised immune system, certain stuff like that, they're gonna have long lasting damage. Even people who are healthy and certain stuff like that. You don't know what type of stuff that could go on in your body, honestly. I know people was talking about the government and certain stuff could basically have a type of thing where universal basic income. Like, I guess that's what pandemic unemployment assistance is, but they're not going to do that. That thing's not going to be permanent. To give people $600 a week, no. Like, people in Alaska, they get like $20,000. And stuff they got going on out there. But Alaska's cold. There's a lot of military bases and stuff out there, but a lot of people and stuff like that, they gotta carry shotguns because there's bears. And Alaska's not in the continental U.S., so same thing with Hawaii. Hawaii is Oceania. It's out in the Pacific. I know people don't think about that. They don't teach that in school, but I know people have been like NBA players and stuff talking about they don't believe in vaccines. I mean, at the end of the day, that's up to people. I'm not arguing with people whether or not they believe in vaccines or not. Like, people talking about they got sick after they got the vaccine. The thing about that is you may come in contact with somebody who had like a flu, like you got a flu vaccine. That has nothing to do with the actual flu. The flu vaccine gives like a dead or lesser version of the flu so your body can be used to it and adjust it. So if you do come in contact with the flu, your body will be able to fight it. Your body will be able to fight it. That's exactly what a vaccine is. It builds up antibodies and certain stuff like that so your body is able to fight it. Because certain stuff, like if people have a fever that's within a certain range, your brain and stuff shuts down. If your fever is over like 103 degrees and stuff like that, your brain shuts down. That's why people die. Because your neurological functions and stuff go down. Your brain is responsible for your heartbeat and all the other stuff too. Consciousness and certain stuff like that. I'm gonna try to get at least to a 90 on this build. But I think there's a lot of stuff too. There's people talking about the vaccines and certain stuff like that. It's going to be the person who made the fact that vaccines and stuff are causing autism and certain stuff like that. that information stuff was falsified. And basically how people tested for autism and certain stuff is that they just keep moving. Like kids, they're put in a room and certain stuff like that. They put a parent in there. And then they take a stimulus and they don't notice whether or not, and there's other stuff too. They are difficult with concepts and certain stuff like that. That's how autism stuff is diagnosed. It's diagnosed real early, like 3 and stuff like that. That's like someone saying that Tourette's and certain stuff is caused by certain stuff. It's just neurological functions and certain stuff like that. It's really nothing to that. Anybody and stuff, like certain stuff, it can happen to anybody. Nobody's really like, obviously at a certain point, they think that certain people could be autistic or something like that and never got tested. It very easily could be autistic, but autistic and certain stuff isn't as bad as people think it is. Because you have like high functioning people with autism and certain stuff like that, but it is what it is like at a point. 20 years ago, they didn't know that much about like autism, relatively speaking, but my honest thoughts about certain stuff, like when people say that like functions of people's bodies and certain stuff like that, or claim that they got like big pharma, big business, big data, like all this stuff. People need to stop saying big stuff, big pharma, big data, and stuff like that. Like just throwing on big anything is just honestly, people don't do their research about certain stuff like that. And these conspiracy theories, me, I'm not the type of person like really to believe in conspiracy theories at all. There's a lot of this stuff you think about it. The thing about it is that a lot of these people with conspiracy theories, stuff like that, they have a recall of events for one. They're always selling something, like selling a book. They're always selling a book, and the book prices and stuff are pretty steep. They have different recall of events. They're elevated to platform to certain stuff, which is, and they're promoting their book. I don't have nothing against people promoting their book, but the thing about it, if you're going on different platforms, people believe in this stuff, and then you have people talking about coronavirus and 5G, that don't even make any sense. That logically don't even make any sense. Like people was talking about how lettuce and stuff like that had plastic in it. It's not real. First of all, anybody who believes that, something wrong with them. I'm just as sorry as can be. That's just the membrane shedding. That's just the membrane of lettuce shedding. That do a whole biology lab at school with lettuce, and we saw that was shedding and certain stuff like that. You look at it under a microscope. A lot of my stuff, what I did in lab, like this past semester, I had to do a lot of worksheets and stuff on COVID. At least I had to do probably 2 assignments. But I think learning online, that thing, it's not bad. But sometimes if people go on campus, the thing about I'm not really a fan of is people going back on campus, because you really don't know what people's out here doing. I don't really try to get in the culture of college campuses and certain stuff like that. I'm not one of those people who gotta do certain stuff. I'm just not one of those people. Like, the thing about me, I really don't care about being relevant whatsoever at a college level, high school level, or even my time during like school and my upbringing. Didn't care about being relevant. Didn't care about being popular. I didn't care. Because to me, a lot of stuff, you really think about it on average, you know, the thing about it is that, like, being relevant in certain stuff, I mean, that has a shelf life. Just like anything else, definitely has a shelf life. I told, like, this kid that I played with Fortnite, like, the other day, he said it gets beat up, or it gets beat up a lot, like at school, stuff like that. He said they're not looking forward to go back to school. I mean, I can feel that. But I told him you gotta defend yourself. I mean, even if you lose the fight, as long as you black somebody's eye and stuff like that, they got hurt, they got damaged too. I think you'll gain a lot of respect off that. Like me in school, I never got a suspension or anything. I had a clean academic, my whole entire schooling. A clean academic rapport. No suspensions, no expulsions, no nothing. But I don't know. There's a lot of stuff. I mean, like a lot of the stuff that people do, like they're getting good, like gracious with people and certain stuff like that. If you have to do like the dumbest thing I think I've ever known somebody do is somebody didn't like somebody and keyed someone's car and then try to say it wasn't a big deal. Are you out here mind? You don't make excuses for that. That stuff is inexcusable. That's like I know it's definitely a misdemeanor, but it's definitely in that like a class of certain, it's almost serious. Because that, like, they just stack charges with that. Injury to personal property, injury to real property, and then key in the car, yeah. If someone's first offense, then they'll definitely like get something like community service, stuff like that, and they have to pay for the damages and stuff incurred. But honestly, people do stupid stuff, and at the end of the day, if they do that, that's on them, purely on them. I'm still thinking about too people talking about going to COVID hotspots in Lincoln and certain stuff like in Atlanta. Nobody's going to Atlanta. I wouldn't even go to Atlanta. Just because it's open. A lot of stuff too, I just don't believe in like names. Like, or places rather. I don't believe in the hype. With a lot of stuff, I just don't really believe in the hype of a lot of stuff. Relatively speaking, like if someone is talking about, let me think of a thing. Like if someone's talking about certain stuff like a Ferragamo belt and certain stuff, like I don't really have to wear designer. That's the biggest thing. Certain stuff, I feel like you can get good outfits and certain stuff for like $40, between $40 and $50. Like certain stuff to me isn't even really worth it. From perspective, if you think about it. Like to me, people talk about also too in the business world talking about an Armani suit. I want someone tried to roast my teacher in high school talking about he was wearing USPA. Like, I mean, he didn't care. He quit. Well, he didn't quit. He got a different job. He wound up leaving the school job. to work with somebody who does like their person's pretty they're pretty renowned for teaching like financial literacy courses and certain stuff. Luckily, I took that junk for free in high school, like a financial course and certain stuff like that. The course was not difficult at all. It really wasn't difficult at all. All we really did is like I forgot the name of the website, but it was Dave Ramsey's course. And I think my professor, well, not my professor, at that time was a teacher, he knew somebody who worked for Dave Ramsey, and he wanted to getting on with that. So I'm kind of glad that worked out for him. He was fair, so. I mean, my time during high school, it wasn't completely bad, but with just certain stuff, I just don't care to go back to high school. Like reunions and certain stuff like that. Because, I mean, end of the day, it's just like, I got really nothing against the certain stuff, but just the way certain stuff is just, I would say, I don't like when people try to like minimize certain stuff. Like high school, in a sense, it's not really, to me, high school is a waste of time. Honestly speaking, college is not really a waste of time, but I don't know. There's a lot of stuff still going on, like in like college and certain stuff like that. And really, I mean, at the end of the day, it's not really up for like, not really, I wouldn't say discussion, but it's like, I would say a lot of stuff like, I'm not the type of person I feel like I need to be, how could I say, I don't feel like I gotta be relevant and stuff like that. Like I never like think about me in high school and certain stuff like my time during out school, and I would never be up under anybody, being someone's flunky, do stupid stuff. I could think for myself. Definitely had critical thinking skills. I wouldn't say I was like, a lot of people probably think I'm a mature person. I'm not really mature at all, but I think I'm well off in a sense of knowing how to like, in certain environments, know how to conduct yourself. Because like certain stuff, I mean, you don't stoop down to other people's level of like stupidity, in my opinion. And certain stuff too, I think about like, there's a lot of stuff like if people don't do well in school, we know what the prospects are. You work a bad job, a terrible job. A lot of people know the jobs they have is BS, but maybe they don't have the best. I think everybody's good at something. I do believe that, but everybody's not applying themselves. Like if you know that, like you work in high school, certain stuff like that. You working for a McDonald's, a Chick-fil-A, something like that. That's pretty good, but at the same time, even if you're doing something like you have a degree, like you didn't need a degree to work at, let's think of a place like Foot Locker. Foot Locker is good and certain stuff like that, but honestly speaking, you might work at Foot Locker for like, 2-3 years. You're not being a manager. It's not going to happen. I just know a lot of stuff that doesn't happen, at least the way people think it's going to happen. Like, you can work, you can do this stuff, like, you can do everything that is possible to try to achieve your goals. Like you can do certain stuff, like I said, with, like, athletes and certain stuff like that. Certain stuff does not benefit you at all, like, in a sense, because I know of people to go to these schools, like, you might be good in a sense, but you're playing for like a no-name team where you might be the best person on the team in a sense, but you're not as good as you think you are. Like, for instance, D1 athletes, there could be people who's cold in like high school, but when they get to a different level, a different stage, you're not getting the playing time. And then coaches and stuff, they lie all the time. That's the biggest thing about schools and certain stuff like that. Coaches say you're going to be a scoring option and you're not. You don't get as many touches. You're like you're not even really, not saying they're a bench warmer. Like someone could, get 8 points a game. That's not bad, but it matters about playing time. But I think also too, I feel like the biggest thing too that a lot of stuff, like people talking about AAU. I mean, in a sense, I feel like people like the perspective of it. Honestly speaking, you have to play basketball real young and real early to develop your skill set. Some people are like adjusting to like basketball from other countries and certain stuff like that, and they get taught like the game of basketball. So from a standpoint, that's good because they're getting taught how to play basketball and certain stuff, developing their skill set. But after a while, like somebody might be 6'5", a good, I would say maybe 2 guard, maybe they can play 3, certain stuff like that. But after a certain point, or so, let's say someone is like 6'3", 6'4", and they played in high school and certain stuff like that, and then certain stuff too. Some people might take a JUCO route or something like that, or they go to like a let's see, a D2 school, or just go into different schools and transferring, and then try to play for a program. I mean, everything's all relative. Like you have a shelf life with basketball. So, in my honest opinion, like reclassifying and certain stuff like that, or reclassing, it really doesn't benefit sometimes if you really think about it, because at the same time, if you think about it, if you play for a bad team, as is, and I mean, you might be a star player and you transfer to like a Christian school to play basketball and certain stuff like that, and their team is built from the ground up. Maybe they got a good coach. The talent and certain stuff like that is minimal. You might be a scoring option and certain stuff like that, but at the same time, when you go to a next school or you facing a rival school, they have more boosters and certain stuff like that, more type of fundraising, and they have a nice court or nice gyms. And then a lot of stuff people be doing, it's not necessarily illegal in a sense, because you can't really be having unofficial practices within a certain time period. I know a school and stuff like that, like for football, they had somebody in there who didn't necessarily register. They really got the coach out of there. That was just an effort to get the coach on out of there because they didn't like him. And they had to forfeit the loss, and the athletic director did that for the own school's team to get that coach out of there. So, and then the coach previous, the year before, the people were like 8-0. So that's crazy. But they could have appealed it, because the person, they quit the team, but at that time they was on the roster, and they didn't even come to practices, but they had to forfeit all the games. But I think that's messed up. But they could have appealed it, but that just wasn't going to happen. That was they didn't do it. So I mean, it is what it is at that point. But reclassing, I think it's not really a good move. Because, I mean, you think about the pool, out of the thing, if you're not even a 3-star or at least a 4-star at any type of category of sports and certain stuff like that, the point, like, if you're like maybe like 5'9", something like that, or a good, I would say you might be a good running back or something like that, and like reclassing, it really is not going to benefit you in a sense if you're at a bad school. And I know a whole lot of people, they be going to different schools or trying to go to a program that's really good or something like that, or they got a different coach or try to get on. that way. There's nothing wrong with that, but at the same time, the talent and certain stuff, nobody's really looking at these Christian schools like that. So you paying money or certain stuff like that, you getting a little scholarship. I mean, that's good, but at the same time, if you think about it, on average, I mean, majority of the time, there's people who want to go into the JUCO route and then just going to a D2 school or something like that. They could have just gone to the D2 school in the first place, not going to the JUCO. But basketball, in my honest opinion, it's a good sport. But at the same time, relatively speaking, I don't really think, like, people's chance to go into the NBA is like, I don't know the exact percentage, but I know it's very low. It's maybe like between 1 and 3% chance, honestly speaking. And if someone has a bad injury or stuff like that, I know a person from my college, they transferred out, but they said they had a thing, they were a kicker, and they had a thing for University of Miami to be on with the team. They lived in Florida, and they got hurt and stuff like that, and they had to wind up coming to my school. It was a D2 school and certain stuff like that. And he said he signed the stuff like his declaration and intent, stuff like that, to enroll and be a kicker and certain stuff like that. But it was like right before that mark where he was supposed to do it, he got injured, and then they just reneged on his offer, and he never went to University of Miami. I'm not even sure exactly where he's even at now, where he's even playing football at. But the thing about it too, also, you gotta think about conferences. When people go to these different schools and conferences and certain stuff like that, like Big Ten is not even good, relatively speaking. It's laughable. Maybe back in the day, the Big Ten was like a big thing, but just think about the funding and certain stuff that they get. They're not even on primetime network, and then a lot of the games and certain stuff like that is region locked, so you can't watch it under like anywhere. Like certain people have to drive a certain like mile range to watch a game. Like if you're out in the Midwest, you can't watch a UNC game. You just can't. Can't watch no Tar Heel basketball. How? I bet that's 70. I guarantee it's 70. The jump shot. They put it back on to 70. They need to stop doing that. This patch messed up everything. But I think reclassing, in a sense, like, it doesn't really benefit people. Or go to Christian school to play a sport and it's just not even good at all. That's not me being funny at all either. I think that Christian schools and certain stuff like that, they're just programs, the boosters and certain stuff like that. An athletic program, a lot of the stuff, if you think about it, a lot of the schools and stuff, they're making money off the concessions. And the thing that really makes me mad, in a sense, when thinking about people transferring to these programs and certain stuff like that, or going to a different school, it is transferring to an high school. But I guess people don't call it, people just call it switching schools. But at the same time, you think about it, you could go to a school that's pretty much, I wouldn't even say built from the ground up, relatively speaking. You could have a coach and certain stuff like that. Maybe he didn't get along with the school. And then maybe, I know coaches and stuff, they don't make that much money. Like from, like I had, when I was thinking about trying out for the JV basketball team in high school, and certain stuff like that. We had this coach, and he was like, we did okay, but necessarily weren't the best squad. Like, and what I mean by that, is that he wound up leaving, I think after a year, because he got on with another school in like Myrtle Beach. So he wound up getting out of there. Because I mean, our program was okay, but he probably only made like, I would probably say between $600. But I guess he enjoyed the thing about it. About the just our school. But I think it's laughable in all honesty. Like sports in a sense, once you like lose a coach in their system and that type of stuff, you get offensive coordinator, especially with football, that's the death of your program. Honestly speaking, you undermine or you undercut one of your top people who really doesn't care about the thing, it's just about the principle. If you think about a program, like if you think about a football program, you know, there's a number of people at least at my school that wind up transferring out of there because a lot of our coaches and stuff like and offensive coordinators and defensive coordinators are out there. They're just out. They got the people to commit and certain stuff like that, and by the time they got there to the school, the person was gone. They did unofficial workouts, met with the team and everything, like in the summer. And you know, once that was over and the person got fired or whatever the issue was, the person wound up leaving, you know, that was pretty much the end of the program, at least a successful one at that. So, undercutting, I guess, like undermining, you know, offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator, or just like coaches and certain stuff, like a running backs coach. They lead you the program, you know, people don't know how to do this stuff. Like agility, the skills, working on that. You know, a lot of stuff is like, I think football and any sports is mental. Like, it's really about it. Because, I mean, if you're not doing that much, you're disheartened and stuff like that. You know, your coach and stuff is gone. I mean, you're really not going to achieve anything. People not doing their job. Like, people not blocking. The running back is not going to do but so much. Defense and offense is hand in hand. But to me, defense definitely makes offense a lot easier. Like, I think when kids and stuff are transferring to like 3 or 4 different schools and certain stuff like that, for like in high school for a program, stuff like that, playing AAU, I think there's certain stuff after a certain point you already know like what's gonna, not necessarily what's gonna happen, but you already know the trajectory. Like, you play for 3 or 4 different teams and certain stuff like that. You want to get on. Sometimes it's the talent, the overall talent. Sometimes it's the coach. Sometimes it legitimately is the coach. You can get on with the team and then not really do anything. And I feel like a lot of stuff too is that some people just undisciplined. It really doesn't really matter. It's just the principle of a lot of stuff. You're not disciplined, like a fighter and certain stuff like that. Like in boxing, a lot of people and stuff are supposed to like abstain from sex, just in general, and like at least professionally, because they said that like it's improving and certain stuff like that. It definitely affects your performance. Well, a lot of people don't follow that, but at the end of the day, that's other people's business. I don't really get into that, but a lot of stuff is just undisciplined. Like Mike Tyson, I think Mike Tyson is definitely one of the greatest heavyweight fighters at the same time. He never really won that many fights once he lost. He made a couple, you know, good comebacks and fights and stuff like that. Once he lost to Buster Douglas, he definitely it's pretty much over. And then his incarceration. I mean, it had that much to do. He legitimately didn't have that much to do. So, I mean, Mike Tyson, I mean, once you're in a phase of where you're not really playing, actively playing like ball like that or anything, or playing sports like that, for any reason, like a extended period of time, your game and your element stuff is going to be off. Like, people talking about Pacquiao. I think Pacquiao is a great fighter, but honestly speaking, you're not going to be 41 and moving as fast as you think you are. And boxing is really, to me, it's tactical too. It's really more than just sitting up here. A lot of people, they throw power punches, but it's really not even about that per se. Even knockdowns and knockouts. Tyson Fury won the first fight outright, but Deontay Wilder knocked him out. I mean, is it a questionable call? That what you call it? The fight ended the way it ended, in a draw? No. The rematch was good, but I think the problem with like Deontay Wilder, he's just like a power puncher. He's not really tactical, landing that solid body shots and certain stuff like that. I think Anthony Joshua was an okay fighter, but he shouldn't have lost the first, when he lost that thing to Ruiz. That was pretty bad. And then he knocked him out on that rematch. They face in Saudi Arabia, I think it's Riyadh, if I'm not mistaken. I watched the highlights from it, but I think boxing, in a sense, you really don't have that much stuff really going on in boxing, relatively speaking. Like, you don't really have any undercards, the purses and stuff for the fights. They're pretty laughable if you think about it. You really don't have no tip-top boxer, in a sense, right now fighting. You got a few names tossed out there, but nothing that's like Mayweather. Nobody's getting a $120, $130 million fight. Nobody's getting that. And then the box office and stuff like that for the fights, the pay-per-view. I mean, UFC does okay, but like a lot of UFC people are pretty much out. I think like Anderson Da Silva, I hope I'm saying that correctly. It's like maybe he's like the only one that I think he's still fighting, relatively speaking, last time I checked. But I think MMA and that type of stuff, I mean, that Fight Island, I mean, you really don't have, you do have certain people, but a lot of people are getting old, and a lot of that stuff is kind of phasing out, like these people's career. Like, you think about it. There's nobody, like, after a certain point, people are not really playing at a high level or fighting at a high level after a certain point. Like Shane Mosley. Like, Shane Mosley, he was a decent fighter, I would say that. I think he's now doing color commentating. But otherwise, I really don't see that he's doing a lot. Yeah, I hope he's not boxing still. Yep. He old. He was still fighting when he was 45. I don't think 45 is that old and certain stuff like that. And there are certain boxers and certain stuff that was fighting for a long time. Like Larry Holmes. He was pretty decent. But I think in a sense, you know, everything has a shelf life. You know, you have to be smart in a sense of like, not even saying training your body. Because you can train your body all day long, but like, you can't honestly, like, some people have to retire from boxing because they mess up their hands. Like Nassim Hamed. He had to, retire. He's 36-1. He only boxed for like 10 years. I mean, 10 years in like a contact sport, I think that's pretty decent. But like football, average football career is like 7 years. I think Cam Newton, he's going to phase out the league. And I'm a fan of Cam Newton, but honestly speaking, you know, especially with football, Cam Newton played for a community college, and then he went to another college and wound up going to another college. Then before he landed at Auburn. That I'm sure of. Let me check that real quick. I don't think Cam Newton is 100% garbage. I just think that he really don't want to play for certain teams. If you had to think about it, because Kyle Allen came in there in a system that pretty much, it's not Cam Newton's fault, but at the same time, you know, once you have a second string quarterback or maybe even third string, I think Kyle Allen's like a second string quarterback, if that. Yeah. Oh yeah. Cam Newton did have to play at college, Blinn College, played at a JUCO. But the thing about JUCO product and certain stuff like that, a lot of people, their academic eligibility and certain stuff is done, not cutting in the classroom. That's not a story for another day. But like Cam Newton, we're gonna go to Cam Newton. Cam Newton's a pretty, I would say he's a solid quarterback, but at the same time, if you think about the routes, people blocking, like Matt Ryan too, he's another one. I don't think he's necessarily bad, but there's just certain players and certain stuff, you know, it's not going to add anything. Like Julio Jones, he be getting yards and certain stuff, but what are the Falcons really producing? Nothing. Nothing. Matt Ryan, I wouldn't say he's washed up, but at the same time, he could be considered washed up. His best years and stuff are behind him. Like people talking about Von Miller. Von Miller is good in a sense, but his team is not. I think Von Miller is smart in a sense. He knows the game of football, but at the same time, what are the Broncos producing? Nothing. Nothing really, honestly. And you have so many different people who are like in the same type of positions and certain stuff that are doing just as good. They just don't get. You really have to pay attention to the conferences. You really have to pay attention to the conferences. But I definitely said at one point Von Miller. I mean, you don't really think about it. You don't hear anything relatively about Von Miller. You don't even hear anything about the Denver Broncos. Arizona Cardinals are just bad. They got Kyler Murray, but I mean that right there, just because you have a decent player, it's not really producing anything. That's not me being hateful or anything like that. It's not producing anything. Like, people talking about Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey's good. He's good, but I don't think he's going to get the amount of yards, certain stuff that people are saying he's going to get or predicting. I mean, I feel like Christian McCaffrey is an unpredictable player, but if you go through personnel changes and certain stuff like that, and people not getting along in the front office, you know, that's a recipe for disaster. Like, to me, sports and certain stuff like that, the NFL, You think about it, all it takes is somebody, a system or coaches and stuff like that to get going. Certain stuff like that. People are rebuilding, or they just undermine the coach and certain stuff like that. The thing about it, you really can't build a team, or people try to like franchise tag players and certain stuff like that, not realizing that's really harming the franchise itself. Or not paying people or compensating people. Like there's a group of people, I think they saw football for what it is. Like DeMarco Murray, he got out of there early. I think Des Bryant at this point, at this stage of his career, I think he's probably done. It's not that he's a bad player, but at the same time, you got people probably maybe doing a little bit less than he is, relatively speaking. A lot of people probably say he's overrated. I mean, give or take, him going on the Saints, getting signed to the Saints, and then I think he got, consequently, he got waived for getting injured or something like that. He was already coming from an injury. He didn't get picked up, back up from the Cowboys, and he wanted going to the Saints. I think it was his option. And then he only played like maybe a couple games, maybe some practices and stuff like that, and he was gone. I didn't even hear that he even got waived. I had to find out. Des Bryant. Yep. Des Bryant has not even played in a long time. The thing I think also too, Marshawn Lynch definitely shot himself in the foot by taking that year and a half off. He was built differently, and I think once you take a, like I said, once you take a break off of sports or whatever type of thing, or being athletically in shape. Maybe he was still in shape, but his whole like physical profile was a whole lot different, and maybe not the same. His speed and stuff wasn't the same at all. And then I still think about the Raiders. The Raiders are, I mean, they really didn't do that much. They stink. Maybe they underwent some personnel changes, but Derek Carr, he was at least solid. Maybe like I would say 3 to 4 years ago, but that's changed. But I think that the Raiders and certain stuff, they had like certain people who are maybe, I wouldn't say overrated and stuff like that, but maybe they just didn't live up to the expectations. Jamarcus Russell, he's definitely up there. But professional sports, in my honest opinion, or just like people trying to go pro, like the whole thing is people spending money like from a certain age, or people getting all these different trainers and certain stuff like that to try to go to the league. I feel like it's ridiculous in a sense because, like, you know, there's not that many people honestly going to the league now. Honestly speaking, it just depends. Like, you really don't hear anybody who's like 5'5" and is going to be a running back and then go to college and play like that. They're pretty good. They have speed. You really don't hear. That's really an anomaly if you think about it. But, you know, people going and paying trainers and certain stuff like money to try to improve on certain stuff, or say they got scouts, they got connections. Yeah, that's the biggest scam ever. That's the biggest scam ever. And the thing I think with certain stuff too, like AAU, hey, there's really nothing wrong with AAU, but I feel like the biggest problem now and the biggest challenge that they have now is, you know, the sponsorship underwrites some of the costs and certain stuff like for teams. But there's just certain stuff too, even when people try to get their kids and certain stuff like that. And a lot of stuff too, I think people will be vicariously living through their children and certain stuff like that. Going to the league. The thing about that, there's nothing wrong with people trying to go to the league, but reel it in. Because you're like, they're schooled up with powerhouses and certain stuff like that. And, you know, people not going there anymore. Like Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech used to be a basketball powerhouse and football powerhouse, but you don't hear anything about Georgia State at all, or Georgia Tech. Both of the schools, really, if you think about it. You don't hear anything about those schools. And then the draft class too. That's another thing people don't think about. By reclassifying, if you're like 5, I would say between 5'7" and I would say between like 5'9" and stuff like that. You gotta think about, not saying you can't get to certain stuff, but like size wise too. Being between a certain weight range is good though. But agility and certain stuff like that. Your 40-yard dash time is not good and certain stuff like that. And you're ranked. You're trying to get up higher. And then you think about the conference and the people that you face up against. And the odds and stuff are stacked against you in a sense because you're in a no-name school and you try to transfer to at least a halfway decent program. The thing about it too, also, I know people like at my old high school, this coach, he would be monitoring like people's food, like if somebody was having fries for lunch. The thing about it, in high school, the fries and stuff were not that good. Those are the most disgusting fries ever. Those are the most disgusting fries. Like cafeteria food is nasty at school. Just nasty. Just a sidebar. But if you pay money for certain stuff, like on average, a lot of people, athletes and stuff like that, try to get on these protein plans, certain stuff like that. At least in college too, people be in, I would say, maybe 3,000 calories lifting weights and certain stuff like that, eating protein, eating grilled meat and certain stuff like that. They do get vouchers and certain stuff like that. And then you have sometimes schools and certain stuff like that allocating money. And they go to Jason's Deli and different stuff like that. They have the nights out. They give them a stipend of money for food and certain stuff like that. But there's just certain stuff like too, at least in college, there was like a player, at least I think it was the NC State basketball. His name was like BJ Anya. He wasn't necessarily a bad basketball player, but he wasn't disciplined. Like he was like at one point, I think it was like 6'9" and stuff like that. I think he got like upwards to 290. And that was not muscle. That was not muscle. He was maybe like 250, 245, between 245, 255. He had a huge weight gain. I don't even think he's doing anything now. That's sad. That is sad. I would say he's a solid role player. Yep. Who? 6'9", bro. He's 325. Oh my god. That's ridiculous. Being 325, that's not good. That's not muscle. And even then, like, people gain weight like Zion. That weight and stuff is not good. Like, he can be 6'6", what, 285? That's not good. The only thing I think could stop Zion's career is a knee injury. And he's got a couple close calls considering his legs and his knees and certain stuff like that. He gets fouled and he tries to perform a dunk. That could be the end of his career. I don't hope it's not. But at the same time, basketball and all these sports and stuff have a shelf life. There's been plenty of basketball players getting some accidents and certain stuff like that. A torn femur. They never play a game of basketball again. Never play another game of basketball. You get in an accident, have a broken femur, you really can't come back from that. Your quality of life is pretty much limited. Like Paul George, his injury was pretty bad. He came back, but I mean, think about it. His leg basically snapped in half. You could see it jolting out of his leg. And I mean, to think about it, you know, you have weight, you got certain stuff. I mean, you gotta be careful, but like the support for these shoes and stuff is bad. The soles and seams and certain stuff like that is pretty bad. You had people's shoes and stuff exploding like in 2015, just falling apart in NBA games. There was multiple instances of that happening. I think that was rather interesting, and I think that was crazy. So, give or take, I think a lot of stuff is just like interesting. While people talking about playing overseas is not bad, but at the same time, you got to realize playing overseas. I'm not saying the talent and stuff isn't good because people still get paid. But at the same time, you're playing for these stuff, you don't really speak the language. They have translators and certain stuff like that for people. Like, I think there was a decent player, I think. He's from North Carolina. He was a coach for a while, and I think he's now a coach for, I think, like, in D.C. for the G League. David Noel. He was pretty good. He played basketball in France for a couple of years. He could jump out the gym and stuff like that. How? They're like Marco Bellinelli. Is that Marco Bellinelli? I'm pretty sure it's not. Ricky Rubio. But I think honestly basketball and certain stuff in sports, I feel like after a certain point too, just playing at a certain level, it only gets more difficult at a certain point. Like for instance, there's a couple other basketball players and stuff are pretty decent and certain stuff, but it really hasn't produced anything. Like the programs and stuff they went to, like Isaiah Washington Jellyfam, I think he was decent, but at the same time, you know, I think he went to Washington. State, like Washington University, something like that, in Washington State, but they just call it Washington. And yeah, I think he's currently at Iona. Hopefully, I'm saying that right. He's playing for like one of those teams. Last time I checked. Yep, he transferred out of there. He transferred out of there. Long Beach State. Red shirt. A lot of people really gonna start losing eligibility too. Like, if you think about it too, transferring to like 3 different programs and the programs and then the conference you're in really isn't producing anything. You don't get the coverage, you don't get anything. Nobody's really talking about Isaiah Washington at all. He was nice and like high school. I still think he's still decent, but at the same time, you gotta think about the programs. You really have to think about the programs. Minnesota. Played for Minnesota. I know I got one of them right. I wasn't exactly sure. But I think definitely too, like the class, like there's like a lot of talent in this upcoming draft. I'm pretty sure the draft and stuff is canceled. It has to be canceled. I'm gonna go for 10,000 VC, 2 incentives. Go for a 3% counter offer. Progress. $7,000 VC. Okay. I'll play a few more games, but otherwise than that, I'm not even sure. But we can talk about it. So one thing I also think about too, sports in general, like in my honest opinion, especially like people trying to get to the next level. The thing about it is that you think about the shelf life of just a player. Now, even like I wouldn't even say people talking about Deontay Murray. I don't think he's necessarily bad. I just think he's a role player. The thing about the league, you don't really have to be, but so I wouldn't say like maybe they are nice. Cause you'd be surprised, even though an NBA player might get like 7 points a game or whatever their field goal percentage is, they can actually knock down shots. They can knock down a decent percentage of shots. Like Markelle Fultz, I don't think Markelle Fultz is 100%. I don't really think he was necessarily the best, relatively speaking, if you think about that whole draft class, even Lonzo Ball. But like Lonzo Ball and Markelle Fultz were glorified role players. They serve a purpose, but at the same time, Markelle Fultz came off injury. He got injured in the NBA. He came before with the injury, got injured in the NBA, and tried to make a recovery, and then tried to work on that jump shot. But I think the thing is with like sports too, in my honest opinion, you pay in a sense to develop a skill set. I think that's somewhat that some people are paying like to develop their skill set, but at the same time, people should be spending, like AAU's gotten a little bit worse. I know sponsorships and certain stuff like that. You have NBA players, basically, there's none of that stuff going on. Where like, coach and stuff, people paying for his expenses and certain stuff like that. Going to these different tournaments. But the thing about AAU is really, in a sense, it's not bad, but the same thing like everything else. Like, it's just like at a certain point, like, playing in a soccer league, you're paying money for like AAU version of it. It doesn't really make that much sense, in my honest opinion. Just we really don't know scouts are really out there like that too. And the thing about it, in my honest opinion, playing like professional ball and certain stuff like that is good. I support people in their dreams, certain stuff like that. But just certain stuff just isn't going to pay the bills at a certain point. Like I know somebody who's probably like 6'9", 6'10". They're working at Bojangles, certain stuff like that. Nothing wrong with that. But I think at a certain point, somebody probably gave up on their dreams and stuff like that, and nothing good came from that. I think that's pretty sad. Could have been solid in high school, something like that. Maybe didn't do certain stuff. That's sad, legitimately. But at the same time, you think about a lot of talent and certain stuff like that. You have people who are probably 6'9", 6'10", in that range, never really developed a certain skill set, like maybe post moves, maybe, I wouldn't even say jump shot. Jump shot is kind of easy and certain stuff like that. You can go to the NBA without a jump shot. Look at Ben Simmons. Now, one player that I think that people talk about Anthony Bennett. Was he bad? I don't think Anthony Bennett was, bad. But he definitely set the Cavs up to be trash. Honestly speaking, the Cavs and stuff, they gave up a majority of their talent for mediocre talent. They did get a championship ring out of it, but look at their franchise now. no movable assets and certain stuff. They got, I mean, they did get LeBron. They did have Kyrie. But what did that produce? Honestly speaking, a championship ring. That's good. I'll tell you anybody, that's good. But at the same time, we gotta think about the before and after. Like the Brooklyn Nets, they traded for years, 7 years, like for mediocre talent, and produced nothing. They still really not really producing anything, if you ask me. Spencer Dinwiddie, he's decent. I will say he's decent, but he's definitely had a couple stints in the G League. Not saying that doesn't happen. Work on his skill set. It's not really representative of whether or not a player is good or bad. But at the same time, if you've been assigned multiple times, you gotta think what the league right now is just watered down. Honestly speaking, just watered down. Like if you think 9 times out of 10, you think about some of the players, like J.R. Smith. J.R. Smith is not but so good. That's relatively speaking, he's a role player. The Lakers right now have glorified role players on their team. They had people that shouldn't even been on the NBA team. I saw a workout that somebody did, like Mario Chalmers. Mario Chalmers is a glorified role player. Never really wasn't bad, but he's like another Rondo. As long as he gets his double-double, 10 points, 10 assists, he's good. I mean, that's what they're needed out there for. But at the same time, you think about it, the league right now is, I don't know. If you think about it, you really don't know who's really out there, like, relatively speaking. Like, you don't know who's really out there producing what. Like, for instance, I would probably say the Nets really haven't produced anything for a while now. Like, the Nets, they had a lot of people. I can name a few players that they had that looked promising. Didn't really do anything. I think Marshawn Brooks is one of them. This dude named Devin, that's when he played for the Nets, New Jersey Nets. Marshawn Brooks was supposed to be the next superstar. At that time, originally when he played for the Nets, he's supposed to be the next superstar. He was decent. At the time I was watching it, but he really didn't produce anything. He's a glorified role player. Nothing wrong with that, but just overall, Marshawn Brooks only had like a good. He only had like a good, maybe, when he first started out, he probably only had one good season, then the skill set started to diminish. He had like a 13-point in his first season with the Nets. Then that kind of got bad. The thing that really kind of set the Brooklyn Nets back is once they got Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, and Jason Terry. All their careers basically ended in Brooklyn, relatively speaking. Their production and certain stuff. I mean, they did get old, but if you think about it, they should never even got traded from Boston. I think that was the worst decision they could have made, relatively speaking. I would rather them to go ahead and retire at that point. Paul Pierce, he was decent. I'll put it at that, but like his last couple like campaigns were just bad. He went through like a number of teams. I think the last team he went with the Clippers, and I really didn't keep up with that. Rondo's gotten pretty old. He's like 33, 34 at this point. I don't think Rondo's bad, but he just serves a role as like a role player. He's there to fill a role. Nothing wrong with that, but at the same time, if you think about on average, why would a player, in a sense, been playing for a while, go to different teams, be a free agent. There's even more players I think were glorified role players too, or they didn't get the credit they received. Monte Ellis, he was decent. He was decent. But at the same time, Monte Ellis, he got out the league fairly young and he's retired. Deron Williams, glorified role player. Nothing wrong with that. He just on a bad team. Didn't produce anything. Like being on the Jazz for like, I would say 9 years for your career and then go to Brooklyn. That's what I'm talking about. Like, Brooklyn has been doomed for a while. I will say that. Brooklyn has been doomed for a while. Mediocre talent, give up draft picks and certain stuff like that. Really didn't net them anything. Do I think Brooklyn's going to do anything bad, like, in the upcoming, like, future? I don't know. We're just going to have to see. But Brooklyn, they did get KD and stuff like that, but I honestly think that Kyrie's skill set and certain stuff is diminished because maybe in the heart of it, I don't think that he, legitimately wants to play for certain teams. Honestly speaking, like Boston. I don't think he liked Boston. He got out of because he didn't like it. Definitely got out of Cleveland, didn't like it. Certain stuff. Every team I feel like has done that. Cleveland and Brooklyn messed themselves up badly in terms of giving up draft picks for mediocre talent and people who really aren't that good. Like, I remember when Cleveland got Dion Waiters. Dion Waiters, he's not a bad player. He had a couple good seasons, but otherwise than that, really didn't net that much. Honestly speaking, really didn't net that much. Like, if you had to think about it, a majority of the people in their campaigns and certain stuff like that, they trying to get, like, Deron Williams, solid. I think he was solid at the roles he was given. The game in basketball, relatively speaking. But the thing about it, at a certain, you really don't do that much. Career statistics. Let's see. Utah and stuff really wasn't that good at all. Devin Harris. There we go. Devin Harris had only probably he had averaged 21 points a game in his best season, 2008 and 9. But they didn't do anything. They went 34 and 48. I think people's skill set and stuff like that, if you think about it, conferences and stuff, they do matter. But I think, on all honesty, like, if you're playing basketball for a certain point, or a team that's not doing much of anything, you're obviously going to get disheartened. Like, I think one player that shot themselves in the foot, honestly speaking, probably should have stayed the extra year, and his career hasn't really turned out well, is Jahlil Okafor. Jahlil Okafor, he was a solid, I guess, in college, but otherwise than that, you know, once you get to the NBA, and he got like indefinitely put on the bench, well, I guess with his actions off the court, doing certain stuff like going to the club and other stuff, he won't even of age. You know, the thing I think about the NBA and certain stuff, I think a lot of stuff, in a sense, I feel like people and stuff are not, everybody in a sense is immature in a sense, even myself. Like, there's a lot of stuff you have to grow up. I feel like in the sense of the NBA and stuff like that, people are forced to grow up too fast in a sense, without the resources and certain stuff like that. But in all honesty, like if you think about a majority of the type of talent and certain stuff like you see over a point in time, I think a lot of stuff like sports and stuff, it's lackluster. A lot of stuff comes down to personnel, and a lot of stuff has to come down to what you call it, just what people are given at any given time, the positions and certain stuff like that. Scouting and development is definitely a good thing to have, but at the same time, you have people trading away stuff for mediocre talent. I think that's the problem with the Nets, and they're paying for it, relatively speaking. The talent is there, but they just don't have the discipline from players and certain stuff like that. Joe Harris is one of the best three-point shooters in the league right now, statistically speaking. He gets like 14 points a game. Nothing wrong with that. I think he has a better, it's up there, better three-point shooting percentage than Steph Curry. But that's because Steph Curry, he shoots a lot of threes. 40% from three is not bad, or 38%, that's not bad. There's nothing wrong with that. But like if someone's shooting like let's say 29.297, that's bad. Jonas Valanciunas. There's a number of NBA players and stuff like that I feel that are, I don't want to say bad, but you just don't hear that much about. Like if you think about it on average, let's think about a couple players who came and went. I think Steven Adams is pretty decent. He's pretty good at center. I think Enes Kanter, I mean, he's been decent, but it's not like he's a star by any means. What's another player? Al Horford, he's decent. I'm not even sure what team he played for, but I know he got out of Boston. I most definitely know he got out of Boston. Haven't heard anything about him at all. I'm pretty sure. I wouldn't be surprised he's a free agent. He still plays for the 76ers. I remember that, but I didn't understand that at that point in his career why he did that. But the thing about it, I guess in a sense, once you get to a certain point in the league and certain stuff like that, I think that a lot of stuff is done. The one player I think that was decent, they came from the same class as everybody, like the one, what could be considered the best class, 2003, but they just on a bad team. But he only had hops, really. Josh Smith, Atlanta Hawks. Josh Smith and Atlanta Hawks. Josh Smith could jump out the gym, but I don't even think he's even playing ball. Let me check that out real quick, because Josh Smith used to be decent. But I think for a while, I feel like he only had like 8 good years, and then he started declining. Yep, he retired. I didn't even hear about that. He had a good 8-year run, and then he just started going to different teams. And after that, that was pretty much Done deal. I don't think that James Harden will ever get a ring, or Russell Westbrook. And I seriously believe that wholeheartedly. Um, the thing about it too, like the Houston Rockets, that personnel change they made. PJ Tucker, he's a decent player. I'll say he's a decent player. He's a solid role player. But if you think about it, they got rid of Clint Capella, and Clint Capella is like the driving force of the defense. Nobody would try to dare go into the paint against Clint Capella. So by Clint Capella and certain stuff like that being within a certain, he was running the 4 and 5, and PJ Tucker was kind of playing, I would say, small forward. He's on like 6'6", really 6'5". But that's not the point. 6'5". But you can't really have PJ Tucker out here guarding centers, like top rated centers, like 7'3". That's really not gonna work out. It's a mismatch not only for him and the center. You think about that speed and agility. I'm not even sure if Eric Gordon even still plays for the Rockets. Eric Gordon, I remember when they shot a horrendous thing in a playoff series, like maybe 7-32. They just kept gunning the whole entire fourth quarter. Live and died by the 3. They got blown out. And that's when they still had Chris Paul. Chris Paul, I don't think his best years are behind him, but I think that he's decent. I believe he's decent. But at the same time, he's not going to opt out of that $140 million, 5 years. I wouldn't either. But at the same time, if you think about it, $140 million, that's still a lot of money, but at the same time, when people are doctoring these deals and certain stuff like that, there's nothing wrong with people and certain stuff like that, getting with the agent and certain stuff like that. But the thing I question too are the agents in that for, looking out for the actual client instead of like just having their own agency group and then just having people and then charging like 25% to manage people. I question that. You can probably get somebody respectable 18%. I'm not really a fan of big names and big stuff like that because at the end of the day, I'd rather go with a rather successful kind of name or something like that. If something is being managed and certain stuff like that, then go out with like a top dog name, because a lot of stuff, you're not really getting the service at all. A lot of the services and certain stuff like it's not top notch. And then I'm thinking about Zion, like Zion wins, and the only thing you hear about him is him getting sued and then getting $400,000 to play for Duke. $400,000 is a whole lot of money, but then again, if you buy a $200,000 car, a $200,000 home, that money and stuff is definitely going to dwindle. That money and stuff is going to dwindle. A lot of stuff too isn't that smart. I feel like if anything, I'd rather build a mansion to buy a actual thing. But I know that's even probably more, you have to have a parcel of land. You have to do that. And you have to get permits and certain stuff like that. It's a process, but at the same time, you can control what you want with the house. and certain stuff like that. Oh my God. But yeah, I feel like there's not one thing. Just because someone could have like 800,000, don't mean they need to go out here and buy something that's between $350,000. Did you not think about taxes? Sales tax on vehicles, certain stuff like that. I know people talk about self-made millionaire and certain stuff like that. A lot of the stuff, I mean, it's a nice story, but at the same time, a lot of this stuff, I mean, I really don't care that much. Cause to me, I don't talk about money. It's just money's a concept. It's a concept. Cause like if you're not really investing your money well, like there's a player, his name was Junior Bridgman. He didn't make that much money in his playing career in the NBA. He owns like a lot of locations of like he's a franchisee of like Chili's and Wendy's. He's worth like at least like 800 million, something like that. Oh, I try to be a good teammate. But if you have to think about a lot of stuff too, um, people talking about too, how can they invest their money, certain stuff like that. I mean, I don't really talk about investing money and certain stuff like that. I don't read articles or try to do that type of stuff. Cause me, a lot of this stuff, you know, you gotta be careful. You really gotta be careful. Like stock market and stuff has a risk. And think about risk is not bad, but at the same time, if you're not really investing money, you don't really know what you're doing. If you're not working with certain people, the thing about it, um, there's a lot of stuff that people really just don't understand or comprehend. Like, you know, people having entourages and certain stuff like that. Or they talking about they had to roll 50 deep. You know, I'm not other people. I really don't. Or I feel like I have to be validated by other people because, you know, the thing about that, there's only so much you're going to do. I'm not the type of person that, you know, I'm with people because I feel like they can do something for me. I'm not one of those type of people. I'm self-sufficient. Don't need nobody to pump me up to do nothing. Because I'm be good regardless. And I feel like that sets me apart from others. In a sense, I'm self-sufficient. I don't really need nobody's help. Certain stuff like that. I don't even like saying cut from a different cloth. Because that, to me, everybody says that. Or certain stuff like that. Or... But in my honest opinion, there's a lot of stuff that I think is just, I don't know, for lack of better words, it's not really based off of certain stuff too. Like, people talking about hitting the lottery. The lottery and certain stuff like that, people's chances of hitting the lottery are really low too. And then taxes. or people have a job and certain stuff like that. The jobs so that people work, they're not 100% bad, but like, or someone gets some type of newfound money or something like that. People don't invest their money, or like for instance, if someone gets a windfall of cash or something like that, a pretty, uh, I would say grand amount. You know, let's say someone gets like $300,000 or something. You know, you should have like a financial advisor or something like that to help you manage money and certain stuff like that. Cause you can blow money on stupid stuff. People can blow money on stupid stuff. Like, I don't know. Once you have like certain stuff going in and out, like someone needs to feel like they need to run 50 deep and they see how much money they lose. You can't take care of everybody. I'm sorry. I 100% believe that you really cannot take care of everybody. Like, I really do not feel like, if anything, sometimes you really do not need to be validated by people. You really don't. Boom sound tremendous. I was watching this thing, I think it was on World Star. Somebody rented like, I think it was like a Bentley or something like that. And it got, I guess he had it in like, he put it in like neutral or something like that, or just had the car rolling, and he damaged it. That junk got completely torn up. Yeah, that's an L. A $300,000 car. It ain't something that could be buffed out, a little scratch. No, you on the hook for $300,000, but that's not even $390,000. That car is probably like 600. I'll probably say, I was definitely probably say about $525,000. And then you have to pay fees to DMV and certain stuff like that. So that car right there, nah. Or like the BMW with the what you call it, the doggone thing, the butterfly doors. To spend $220,000, I really don't care about cars or vehicles that much. In a sense, I don't care about what people do with their money. I really just don't. Cause like I said, money is a concept to me. Money is a concept. And to me, a lot of stuff just sends the wrong message to people. And at the same time, you know, in a sense, people got ulterior motives. And at the same time, you just gotta be careful. And another thing I think that a lot of things people doing too, I'm still thinking about something stupid, talking about, you know, you can't talk to me if, what you call it, we're not in the same tax bracket. Okay. We don't have to talk about tax bracket. Or people making quotes like that. Guess what, buddy? We go in the same box as everybody else. Everybody gonna die. You ain't taking money with you. Everybody gotta die. And he's hedging. I knew he was hedging. They do that all the time. Hedge. Lodge. That's a 3. I check my SIGs and my sharpshooting facilitator. But like thinking about certain stuff, I don't know, bro. There's a lot of stuff too. Like it doesn't make sense to buy. He didn't even do anything. To me, it don't make sense to like buy a $340,000 house or something like that, in a sense, or $340,000 car. You don't even have like an amount like that. But that's none of my business. Stuff like that. Like I feel like sometimes in certain experiences, like somebody might get a car and certain stuff like that, they might total that. I feel like that's just that's a wake up call. Honestly speaking. Some people are not the best drivers too. Like you get a luxury vehicle, not necessarily the best driver. You going fast in a car. But certain people be trying to have races with people. Oh no. Just on the highway, even if you have a halfway decent car. Nobody's doing that. You get thrown out of a car through a windshield, you pretty much paralyzed. You're gonna get paralyzed. You're gonna do a somersault in the air. That's what I feel like. That's what Errol Spence did. I like Errol Spence. He's a decent boxer, but he got charged with DWI. And honestly, he acted like I think he got arrested. Like I think he got arrested once that accident happened. He was transported to the hospital and certain stuff like that. When people get in accidents too, they do all sorts of type of blood work, make sure people not drunk. So I guess that's interesting. He got charged with DWI. Completely totaled his car. Oh my God. Ja Morant. Let me shoot the ball. Oh my God. Jed Crowder's, oh my God. To me, too, it really doesn't matter about like cars and certain stuff like that. Like I said, I know somebody who had like a Lexus and they refused to what you call it, put premium gas. You don't buy a premium vehicle and don't put premium gas in there. Who does that? That messes up the car. It does not make sense to get a premium car at all and not like maintain maintenance on it. It does not make any sense. She. Green. Oh my god. Bon sang tremendous. Dress code horrendous. Let me go ahead and shoot the ball. Green. Yeah, that's something I won't get off. Cause I'm actually tired of playing this. Oh my god. What? I'm trying to be a good teammate. They just keep on giving me turnovers. Fucking ridiculous, man. Thank you. Oh my. I know people talk about, like, also too, talking about getting a G-Wagon. Honestly, in my honest opinion, that car is not that. It's not that, like, honestly, it doesn't look that good. It does not look that good. Like I said, I'm good with a good Lexus or something like that. Lexus is definitely a good car. BMW is pretty decent. And if someone talking about BMW is made in Germany, no, it's not. It's made in South Carolina. A majority of the cars are made here, right in South Carolina. Green. Yikes. Whip it through the glass. How? I'm about to get on out of here. Hope y'all enjoyed the stream, y'all. I'm about out. Peace.